Federal investigation comes to California's election process. Will anything result from all the hoopla? This is an article brought to you by Election Integrity Project, California. Discussing all of the faults, weaknesses, and corruption in California's electoral process has become a national pastime these days. Never mind that EIPCA has been shouting the same message from the hilltop for 15 years. Because of the clear and indefensible electoral situation surrounding Steve Hilton and Spencer Pratt, Californians and the rest of the country are finally listening and experiencing the truth in real time. Patriots and election integrity enthusiasts are energized by the hope that finally something will be done to clean up and legitimize California's election process. The brutal reality may be something quite different, but let's start with the good news. It is the constitutional duty of the federal government to ensure that the election of federal representatives, Congress members, senators, president, and vice president is conducted following constitutional and federal law mandates. In other words, if it is in the Constitution or federal law, it is the obligation of the executive branch of government to execute the mandate. Unenforced laws are not laws at all. That begins with the voter rolls. No, they are not the private property of the individual states, and no state has a constitutional or federal legal leg to stand on when refusing to allow federal access to them. That is because the Constitution demands that only U.S. citizens be allowed to vote, and that each citizen vote once and once only. The federal government cannot fulfill its duty to ensure adherence to that mandate without full and consistent review of state voter rolls. California and other states show a complete lack of understanding of what United States signifies or how the Union came to be. The framers of the Constitution were careful to recognize each state as a largely autonomous entity with great independent authority over its own affairs. However, no state has the authority to contradict constitutional and federal dictates. The founders desperately desired autonomy for their states rather than a single centralized government that would swallow them all up and condemn the smaller states to the tyranny of the larger. But they also recognized that no state, large or small, could exist completely independent from the others. Thus, they created America's unique system of government, wherein each state retains all possible independence while both bowing to and benefiting from the union of the whole. We are 50 separate states, but united for very practical reasons. States benefit from belonging to the union. The federal system protects all states equally from foreign aggression, ensures smooth commerce among all states, administers civil rights to all citizens equally in every state, funds much within each state that is of benefit to the country as a whole, and provides assistance beyond what a state can do for itself in the form of disaster relief, etc. For that trade-off, states have an obligation to abide by the Supremacy Clause and recognize that for constitutional and civil rights issues, among others, the federal government's authority is supreme. California wants to eat its cake and have it too. It rebels against the federal government like a petulant and disobedient child, but is quick to request, beg, demand federal assistance when it gets itself into trouble. No state can have it both ways. As California and other states have now begun to learn through the withholding of federal monies that have naively been funding gigantic, now outed fraud schemes. EIPCA alleges that California's election process is one of the biggest fraud schemes going. Federal officials are currently showing an imposing presence in Los Angeles County as California's seemingly endless vote count of the 2026 primary election continues, and vote counts flip improbably and at times impossibly, as in Pratt v. Rahman. California's suspect laws, such as universal mailing of ballots guided by egregiously unmaintained voter rolls, late ballot acceptance, and unreconciled voter to vote counts are under the federal microscope. If justice is real this time and the federal agencies actually do their job, things will go badly for California's government and will be liberating for California's beleaguered citizenry. The sprawling county of Los Angeles encompasses one-third or more of California's registered individuals and has been the tail that wags the dog for decades. It is generally alleged to be one of the most corrupt counties in the nation. It is a logical place to start, and any corrections that may result will be equally applied to the smaller counties, some potentially equally off the rails. Now for the brutal reality. Already we are hearing pundits and even federal mouthpieces wave the white flag, declare that all is definitely not well in California, and then retreat under the banner of dismissal that reads, "But it's legal in California." They are right. California has legalized an electoral fraud machine. To see how it was built, law by law, refer to EIPCA's document, The Golden State Agenda, which is linked in this article. But if the situation is left there with a shoulder shrug, a sigh, and an, "oh well, what can we do?" Californians will once again be disheartened, condemned to the despotism of the ruling class, and denied the blessings of liberty by the continuance of an oppressive, one-sided, and corrupt oligarchy they cannot vote themselves out of. To the pundits, and more importantly, to the investigators, we say California has proclaimed legal what inherently cannot, by Constitution and federal law, be legal. And those laws must be challenged, neutralized, and exchanged for what is truly legal and due to every citizen of the United States, even Californians. Do not turn your back on your duty now. Use your constitutional authority to give Californians back their birthright as Americans, the right to live in a republic. Make this investigation count, or the judgment of history will be unkind. This is an existential moment, not just for California, but for the country. To the citizens of the other 49 states, we say, beware. Examine closely what has happened in California and do not allow the same thing to happen to you by allowing the adoption of unconstitutional election laws used to implement California's easy to manipulate election system. Some of you are already far down the same road. Making a U-turn now will avoid much future heartache. Pull those weeds of unconstitutional election laws now before they become entrenched and you become transformed into another California. To the authorities within the other 49 states, we say, do not condone California's rebellion and despotism, nor its cruel removal of freedom of choice from its citizens. Refuse the hard-earned tax dollars of your citizens to bail California out of troubles of their own making. Do not seat California representatives who were selected by a corrupt process rather than elected by the people through a fair, honest, transparent, and constitutional process. Do not acknowledge California's electoral college votes until its process is renewed and the true will of the California citizens is reflected in its elections. Hold other similar despotic state governments that have adopted the California model to the same standards. Demand that all 50 states once again recalibrate to the proper balance between 10th Amendment autonomy and constitutional supremacy. Only then will the Republic survive to celebrate another 250 years as the most free, prosperous, and glorious nation the world has ever known or will ever know. Until next time, blessings.